If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership, which is what I'm doing right now. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Now download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started. Yes, download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started now. Thank you. Hello, this is Fam Electric Ghost.
Hello.
So I want to make sure I get your name right. So
Yeah.
Is it TAMS and OTWAY or do I want to make sure I did that right?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay,
That's how
great.
you say it.
Great. So I'm glad to invite you on the show. We're Fam Electric Ghost. We're an indie artist ourselves, but we're also a podcaster. We've been podcasting since 2018. We've just reached a market of about 28,000 listeners worldwide. And, we're trying to grow that all the time, but we're glad to talk to you. You're in Melbourne right now, right?
Yeah, Melbourne. Thanks for having me, by the way.
Well, that's great. Yeah, we're excited. We know you have a new release. I guess here in the U.S. it's still not out.
Yeah.
But Fallen Angel, yeah, we done the pre-save for it, and we listened and we listened to your private link. And we've been listening to a lot of your other material that's on Spotify already. But we'll probably go through our questions, but maybe we'll talk a little bit about Fallen Angel first, since that's your latest release.
Yeah, sure.
So can you kind of talk about it from your promo pictures? You're holding your guitar. It looks like a Fender.
Yeah.
Is that a Strat or Telecaster?
Telecaster.
Telecaster. So is this song? Maybe talk about how you came to Fallen Angel, and maybe tell folks a little bit about like how you what your.
Sorry, I think you just
Can you hear me?
cut out
You
for
still
a
hear me?
second.
Okay. Yeah. So I was just wanted
I
to
got
ask
you.
about the history behind the song and how you came to it.
The song kind of came from a place where, well, it has kind of like a dark beginning. So I have been in some like abusive, toxic relationships, right? And afterwards, when you kind of put in like a really dark spot, and then you kind of start doing dark things and becoming a dark person yourself. And it's kind of about like being in that dark space for a long time and like losing yourself, and then like finally realizing like that you haven't really been yourself, and you're fighting your way out of it, and you kind of get your self-worth back. So that's kind of what like the real story is behind it. But then the playful kind of thing that I have with it is it's kind of like a Kill Bill story, if you want to like put a fun spin on things. Yeah, Quentin Tarantino, like she's out with her samurai sword and she's fighting for redemption.
Yeah, and I got that whole scene, where she's wearing the Bruce Lee like outfit. They kind of look like that's the cool thing about Kill Bill, is that it's kind of got this ode to Bruce Lee, but it's a female lead is carrying that kind of samurai attitude, and then it's kind of like you're out there like running, you're out there but being this like samurai person without somebody, a master. You're out there just like being this like kind of, I don't know, like a lone gunman like Clint Eastwood used to play in his spaghetti westerns.
Yeah.
And got the anti-hero. There's something. The anti-hero is always more interesting than a goody two-shoes.
Exactly. Like there's something dark about her. She's, no one's perfect in this world, and it's kind of like
that's an interesting place to be. Because I actually had a project called Dark Ghost. I said, love's kind of like a dark ghost, like a soul that you shouldn't move toward because it affects you badly. It makes you kind of go into that dark realm. So I've kind of played with that idea myself. Um, so yeah, I totally get it. And it's kind of you do have this kind of
Yeah.
like I don't know, like dark pop kind of vibe. If you know that genre, that's kind of cool. So it's
Yeah.
kind of it's got that feel. So maybe we're gonna go backwards a little bit and ask you how you first got into
Yeah, I
music.
feel like it's a kind of like this single's definitely a mix between like maybe a
Yeah,
Billie Eilish and a Lana Del
yeah, I was
Rey
gonna
type
mention
vibe going on.
because you got that kind of vibe, you got this kind of California dark Hollywood thing. um,
Yay, I love that. I always wanted to
yeah,
be
you
a
kind of got that
Californian
feel.
girl.
It's got a film noir kind of feel. You know, that you kind of get this idea. There's like you're bringing up all these like dark corners and shadows. And I always liked music. Like I got into music when I was young. I got into the Velvet Underground, like Lou Reed, and he was always talking about New York City in that same kind of way. And the kind of dark underbelly of New York, and that's typically not what you do in pop music. When I was always like, wow, that's kind of cool that somebody would go there. But so I guess again to the first question, like when did you first get into music? Like what age did you get into music?
Um, I feel like I was always into music. Like I used to write songs like in the bathtub with my sister when I was like 3, but obviously didn't think anything of it. I wrote songs for like my school musicals, and then I think in my early 20s I was like putting a bit more effort into it, but I wasn't really like thinking like that it was going to go anywhere. Um, and I don't know, it was just yeah, it's kind of a process,
So
but it's led
you
me to
start
here,
on a guitar? Did you
which
start
is
on
releasing
guitar
music.
as a musician? I know you're a vocalist, and vocalists are your voice is your instrument, but you seem to be very guitar focused. Is that the first instrument you started with?
Um, I've always been a vocalist. I think I started with piano when I was in primary school, and I was the worst at it. And I would like, we would have our exams, and I would just pretend like I knew what I was doing, and I would just make up a complete song and then be like, yay. But I think that was like my undiagnosed ADHD at the time. So, um, and yeah, I kind of just focused on like singing and vocalists and that kind of stuff. And then I got onto guitar pretty late in life, like about 19. So it's kind of a new passion for me.
I guess when I always ask people, um, yeah, I guess you realized early, like you had a talent for music, but when does that change to actually like wanting to write your own music? There's a lot of musicians that become like classical violinists or people who do cover bands, but it's a different type of musician that actually decides to be a singer songwriter. When did you actually start to feel that you could craft your own songs, create your own style?
Yeah. To be honest, I the first time I really thought that I could actually do it was the start of last year. Before that, I had written loads of songs, but I only did it as like a catharsis, and I didn't really think about me as a songwriter. Like I didn't identify that to myself because I didn't really think I was like
Mm-hmm.
good enough to say that I was. Um, but then last year I kind of just had this like moment where I realized how much I enjoyed it, and I started performing live for the first time, and I was like, I just took it a little bit more
Yeah,
seriously,
because
I
I was
guess.
looking in your catalog 19. Yeah,
So
because I was looking at your
2019.
catalog
Yeah.
um on Spotify. You had the song "So Sad" that had like 22,000 plays on Spotify. So that song seemed to kick off. So with "So Sad,"
Yeah.
what kind of brought that about?
Um, So Sad was um well, that was written obviously from a
Mm-hmm.
breakup. But that was yeah, from my first real boyfriend that I had, and that was from the breakup. And yeah, that was written like and recorded like years before 2019. So I kind of took a while to actually release it because again, I wasn't really when I was recording it, I was kind of doing it more because it was fun. I enjoyed it, but I didn't take myself seriously. So,
Right. But I guess
yeah.
you found an audience. So did that song kind of show you that people got where you were coming from?
A little bit, but it was kind of the small little EP that I just released at the start of the year, which was actually just meant to be
Mm-hmm.
demos. And like, so since then, I've kind of focused more on like playlisting on Spotify and like things like that. So that's kind of helped with like my songs that I've got up there. But I think when I released the last
Mm-hmm.
EP, like I had more positive response from a lot of people I knew because people were like, "Oh wow, like I didn't realize
Yeah.
it. You could sing that deeply, I guess, because I'm like in person, I'm a bit more like bubbly and light. Um, and I think people are a bit like,
They
"Oh,
saw your stick. Yeah.
it's like that's some
That's in,
yeah, that's some deep lyrics there. Wow."
I think.
Kind of in a good way and a bad
Well, I
way.
think that's really interesting about singer songwriters because, like, I grew up. I'm in my 50s, but I grew up in the 70s, kind of age of singer songwriters, and it's kind of this idea that when a musician gets that stage persona, sometimes a lot of times it's not their stage persona is not exactly who they are in like real life. Like what they're able to do, like an actor, kind of can become another person. And you've seen it
Yeah,
like with people like Freddie Mercury, Lady Gaga, Prince. Like if they get on stage, they have this persona that's not what it is when you talk to them, like face to face. It's like it's totally seems like they've become like a character actor, and they can present
yeah,
themselves in a totally different way. And I think that's the great thing about music is it does have a lot of theater in it if you realize that.
it
And when you
does.
go on stage, some artists do it to kind of protect their inner self and kind of project this other part, or or freeze them when they go on stage, and it's like catharsis. Like you said, a lot of singer songwriters they write not just to even make it big; it's just because it helps them in their own life. And
Yeah.
then if they find an
Well,
audience with it, then that's great. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. That was yeah, exactly. That was the reason why I started writing was it was a catharsis. It was like fun or it let out emotions. So it was yeah, it's that's right what you said.
So it seems like you name check some of your influences, like Lana Del Rey, this kind of film noir type of thing. Are there other artists that inspired you with your music that you keyed on when you're like crafting your own style? Are there particular artists that you're influenced by?
Yeah, my early influences were like the Cranberries and like Mazzy
Mm-hmm.
Star and Jeff Buckley. And then later they're more yeah, like Lana Del Rey. I like King Princess. I like Banks. I like Wet. It's like I think they're a New
Mm-hmm.
York band. Um, but yeah, just kind of like I liked that early like singer-songwriter, like female strong vocalist from like the early 2000s, late 90s. So I think that influenced me a lot. And then now I'm into like the dark pop kind of alt pop
That's
world.
interesting. I was always like very much. I started to lean toward female singer songwriters like Juliana Hatfield and Liz Phair, and then also like Sleater Kinney, just because it seemed like they were doing things that like the male side of pop, like indie pop, had not was not going there, and I really was very much keyed into listen to female singer songwriters because they were bringing a different perspective, which is cool. As a musician, you always want to try to hear like something new, and I was that's kind of why I've been a focus even in my podcast. I tend to interview more female artists in this time period, just because I feel like women artists are actually doing things that are different than what's been done by some of the men in the industry right now.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an African American like experimental musician. The bands I like are like Hendrix and Funkadelic, jazz outfits like Coltrane and Sun Ra. So I'm kind of in a category where I'm not trying to do like what's super popular. I'm into like,
Yeah.
more kind of niche stuff. And so I tend to just want to go toward people who are really, I want to hear something new, so that's,
Yeah, you want to hear something different.
yeah, so that's cool.
Yeah.
So your writing style, if you're just gonna pin you down, would you say dark pop is your genre, or would you say it's indie alternative, or if somebody's asking like what category it is, what would you say?
I think the category that I'm trying to just, I don't know, focus on, because have had like a hard time trying to like pin down what I want to be and like where I'm going to go. But I think it's mostly alternative
Mhm.
pop with like the dark pop influences.
Yeah, I mean that's the zone I like to be in,
Yeah.
because it's really weird. Like if you say you're electronic, like I'm a synth player, but if I say I'm electronic, a lot of people will think I'm a DJ, and I'm not a DJ. Not that that's bad, but I'm not a DJ. So I think like sometimes it's very important to kind of know like where you are, to know your market, and to kind of know where you're pushing. And it's just interesting.
Yeah.
Today, like there's so many people who are kind of cross genre. There's people who are mixing like elements of hip hop with pop and all
Well,
kinds of.
that's like, yeah, that's the hard thing, isn't it? Because like I feel like the genres now are just so mixed that like, when you upload a song and then you have to pick what genre it is, and you're like, I don't even know
Yeah,
anymore. Like I'm influenced by so many different kind of genres as well, and like so many different styles of artists that I think music now isn't just like, it's not just like rock
yeah,
or
yeah.
like electronic. Like it's got a bit of
Yeah,
everything, I
that's why I
think.
kind of tag what I do as
Yeah.
expansive sound experiments, because I kind of want to be able to say, well, if I want to pull a little Johnny Cash, if I want to pull a little Dylan and then mix like Trent Reznor with it, that's what I want to do. And that's kind of hard to pin down if you're kind of crossing that far. So you tend to say, well, this
Yeah.
is experimental because that's what I'm doing. But they want you to try to put you in a category that you're like a DJ. It's like, not really. Because
Yeah.
I'm using Moogs and Roland hardware synths, so I'm not using like a Pioneer CDJ. And so people get confused. Like I went to New York and they're like, "Oh, you don't just have a CDJ? I have all these road cases." And I said, "Yeah, I got to set up just like a regular band. I'm not just going to come up with my SD card and my CDJ. Like I'm actually going to play." Um,
Yeah.
so that's different. So have you played live with in Australia? Have you done live shows? Because of Corona, you've been kind of like stuck in lockdown like everybody else.
Yeah. Well, I only started doing live shows last year and they were really, really small. Like I started at a little burlesque bar in the city. And then I did some like kind of more well-known but like small venues like the Workers Club, but Workers Club isn't that small, but and then I think it's called Some Velvet Morning in Melbourne. It's kind of like a
Hmm.
small, cute little bar type spot. And then yeah, this year I'm in Melbourne, so we've been in lockdown. Like we haven't been able to leave our 5 km radius, which is like 3 mile radius outside of our house. Um, so yeah, all of our bars are closed. Like, so I don't know. Hopefully we'll get to play live
So
soon.
yeah, that's been a hard thing for musicians. I've been talking for the last year, or since like, well, not year, but since like February when this really started hit.
It feels
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
year. It feels like longer than a
Yeah, because
year.
I mean, it's really crazy for me. Like this year, I finally got an international booker, and I got an agent that could have got me into like London, it could have got me into Berlin, and then suddenly, just when I got them, Americans were like, we can't go to Europe. We can't really go anywhere because our outbreak is so bad. We're kind of banned from everywhere. And so
Yeah.
it's like, oh great, like finally I got a way to do it, to get out there, and then I can't get out there. So I've been doubling down on like podcasting and doing like live shows from my home studio. Um, have you looked into like online streaming, or has anybody approached you to try to get into like online shows?
I would love to. At the moment, it's just kind of like me and my guitar, so I don't feel like it'd be super
Hmm.
interesting. But I have recently gotten TikTok, and a couple of times on TikTok Live, I've kind of like just gotten on the guitar like spontaneously. So
Well, I think it's interesting. Yeah.
that's the shows that I've done.
Well, I think it's something that a lot of artists I've been talking to are starting to really think about. Like, well, maybe I really got to take this seriously and figure out how to present myself to the streaming world and see if I can get on like I've been actually invited a couple times, and I'm in a process trying to set up to be like on like an online like tour. Like there are these now booking agents that know they can't get into the venue, so they're trying to set up like a bunch of indie bands to do like online festivals, and they'll do like
Yeah.
half hours. Every band gets a half hour, and every band has to stream from their like studio or from some location where there's nobody there or something, but the cameras are there. And yeah, it just seems like, well, given what's going on until there's vaccine, it seems like people have got to start figuring out there might be new ways of doing this. They're even like selling tickets. Like this new one I got set up with has like tickets like $5, $10, $15, and a bunch of bands are all on. And so there's some people are starting to think that out and say, we might have to start doing that. So it's just a investment in figuring out how do I present myself. Do I get a video mixer? Do I get multiple cameras? Do I try to get some technology to make it more interesting to put backgrounds on a green screen? There's just a lot of stuff you have to look
Yeah.
into compared to like what I normally would do is have to get a minivan and a roadie, or a U-Haul and drive to New York and stay in a
Yeah.
hotel. So if I look at the cost of that versus the cost of buying this equipment and then getting to be on, all these shows, it actually, if I start making money on it, it might work out. Um,
It's true. And it does sound fun, but I feel like I don't know, for me it's kind of just like missing like this like the sparkle of like getting to play in front of people and like feeling the atmosphere. That's what I
yeah, I
definitely
think the problem would
will
be,
miss. But
yeah,
then,
the problem
yeah.
with it is like a lot of bands I've talked to, they kind of feed off the crowd, and
Yeah.
being a musician, if you can't get that crowd feedback, then it kind of feels kind of dead. It's like, you could get into your song, like as a musician, you can get caught up in your song. So if you kind of focus on, I'm going to try to play the best I can and present whatever, but without that feedback, yeah, you're missing like half the vibe, because you're going to be passionate about what you do, but without being able to hear the audience, feel it and then see the reaction, the musician we feed off of that. So it's kind of like
Yeah.
an actor doing a sitcom
And
with there's no audience there. It's
yeah.
like, well, I can't.
Have you seen like, yeah, they've done like talk show hosts, and now they have like screens as their audience. So it's just like the talk show host just talking to a bunch of
Yeah,
screens. It's just like, oh, how awkward. But I
it's
don't
hard.
know.
And like
It's the
it would be
way it
cool if they
is.
actually could build a way to get feedback. And I'm an IT guy, so I actually proposed to some guys. It's like, if you do an online thing, if you could actually get like a feedback loop that if people hit likes or keep on saying they like it, that you
Yeah.
actually get like applause coming through or whistles coming through. So you actually in real time get the feedback of people saying they like it, like coming into your ear or seeing it, like, in some way. So to kind of make it feel like there's some kind of reaction. So if you could actually create that.
You'd want to yeah, you'd want to change the buttons if it was like a sad slow song and someone clicked like and it was like woo
Yeah, maybe it's a sad
woo.
song. It doesn't.
Someone's like singing like a sad ballad.
Yeah, that doesn't work on sad. It's like if everybody had something like more. Yeah, it's hard to kind of pick up the vibe. You know. Uh,
They could maybe do like a breath, like a ah.
yeah, I don't know. It's hard. If you're trying to create some
Yeah.
virtual world, it's like the VR world might be better. Like if you could suddenly get everybody's webcam, and then somehow in the VR world you see like 1,000 like little pictures of everybody from their webcam. You know, suddenly showing up like on a screen that you can see, and then you see the audience reaction. I mean, it's just a way to get the feedback. I mean, it's just
Yeah,
if
that
you
would be
had something
cool.
like that where you're kind of in this VR world and you got the VR thing on, and you actually see all your fans kind of, and you see their faces and you see them getting into it, that might be more. That's why I was leaning towards something like that, because then that it's a lot. I don't know how many artists have VR because that's expensive. Most people don't have it, so
Yeah.
then that's like, oh yeah.
But I think it's definitely a good idea. You should definitely get onto that, I
Yeah, I
think.
think it's something that if this goes on for years and years, then we're gonna have to go there. But so what do you have you started to like collaborate with other artists? Other than like producers, have you started to like say, okay, I want to work with other people and kind of build like a full band or a connection with another artist, or are you focused primarily on your own act?
I think at the moment I'm focused on my own stuff. I'm still trying to like make my own way into the world, but I've definitely been thinking a lot more about like collaborating recently. But again, like I haven't like really like thought of anyone. I've kind of just been more open to it. So like when I see people from like Melbourne pop up, like I'll look into them just because it would be a lot
Mm-hmm.
easier if it's like local. Um, and in regards to like a band, like hopefully when we can actually start playing live again, I'd love to kind of start creating like something like a little collection of people to like come along with me and like I get to know them and they get to know me and we play live together. Like that would be
Yeah.
a cool thought. But yeah, at the moment it's just me.
So you do a collective. Would you have a backup band for your work, like a full band that represents your songs like live?
Well, the new song that I have has a bit of like trumpet and saxophone in it. And I would just like love if I could actually have that
Mm-hmm.
live. Like that would just be like so much fun, I think. But then it would depend if I like had more songs that had
And part.
like the same
Mm-hmm.
instruments, but it depends. Like if, I got to know some people or if I ended up getting paid a lot of money, then I could pay different
Yeah.
like
So
musicians.
I
But
mean, a lot of solo artists, when they go, live, then they have like the drummer and the bass player and the guitar player and the whole effort. It's your
yeah.
brand, but it's like this is your band. There's an OTWAY band that supports you.
Yeah.
But other than that, because given like when an artist is starting off, we don't get a lot of record company support anymore. A lot of companies don't give you the advance to kind of give you that launch so you can have your band. So then you kind of got to go out
Yeah.
there and do like unplugged or do it like with a CDJ or with a DJ that's running backing tracks so you can sing over it. So like when you imagine going back out there, would you be more like have like a music director that's running like backing tracks and you singing over it, or actually have a band?
I want to put it out there that I'll one day get to play with a live band. I think I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
say that.
But a lot of artists, like I've seen a bunch of artists, like in the last year that I've been talking to, they actually go out with like just like a music director or somebody like a DJ with a laptop and like Pro Tools and maybe some kind of MPC or like grid based controller, and then that's how they present themselves when they show up on stage in their home.
Well, that's probably my more realistic way of doing it. Like when I do get to play, it'll only be small venues anyway at the moment. So it will kind of just be like a little laptop or whatever. But I'm just kind of putting it out in the universe. I just want to be on a stage with like a band with the sax and the
Yeah,
trumpet
yeah.
player. And I just want to like, yeah, really jam it out.
Well, I grew up, like I say, I'm a child of the '70s. So when I went to see music, I go see the Almonds. I saw the full band. I go see the Who. I see the Grateful Dead. I see Funkadelic, and I'm kind of like, even though I play electronic music, like I play Moog. I don't play CDJs. So I've always been more of like I like to see a live band play because I like that interaction, like you're talking about. and I like the improvisation. And like, I don't necessarily want to hear somebody play exactly note for note their song. I kind of like it when they deviate a little bit. Like I used to see Dylan, and he would do "Tangled Up in Blue" with different lyrics every time he did it. Every time he did it, he never did it. There's like 4 different versions of it, and if you see him, he would actually
Yeah,
change the lyrics, and he actually had like multiple versions, and whatever he felt like, he would actually change the story and change parts.
I
And I
like
think
that.
that's really cool. But then today, you got a market where a lot of people were like, they don't like that. Like if a modern band goes on stage and they take their pop song and they change a whole section of it, people are like, what? They want to hear exactly the way it is. And I'm kind of like, well, that's kind of like not what music is about. At least for me, it's like I like to see an artist reinvent themselves sometimes. You know, if they feel like it because of an emotion, they change it. And that is okay
Yeah.
because it's like it's art, you know.
I think like yeah, I totally get you. And I think a lot of pop stars now do that, but if you think about like I've the most watched like things that I've watched on YouTube when Lady Gaga does she'll be at like at her concert and she'll do one of her songs, but it'll just be her and her
Mhm.
piano. And like she tends to change it up a little bit when she performs live, but I guess like when you're that big, you
Yeah,
can
yeah, she
pretty
can
much do
do it.
whatever you
Yeah, I
want.
think like some of the bigger artists will do it, and but yeah, I think some of the people today are kind of one of the problems is if you're kind of like running off a main stage, or you're running off your Pro Tools, you're kind of limited. If you're backing tracks, you're kind of tied to your backing tracks. And so
Yeah,
if you do a
exactly.
show and you're set up like that, and you don't have a really good musical director that can kind of vibe with you, like if you got a musical director that can actually run the clips in a different order or change it up, but if you got a guy that's just like he's locked into it and he can't really change it, then you're gonna be kind of stuck with the song as it was written. Um, and so it depends, how inventive you get. I mean, I see everybody in lockdown doing lots of unplugged versions of their stuff, so it's necessarily changing because they're not doing the full version. But it's just
Yeah.
cool to have that kind of the age when when people could go see the Grateful Dead and like every night they're doing, or Pearl Jam is famous for doing their concerts, and Eddie Vedder would just change it up like all the time. Like he just constantly changes the Pearl Jam songs. He just has a habit of doing that. And Pearl Jam fans will actually go to
Mm.
multiple, like they'll go to like they'll be on tour and they'll do like 3 dates at the same venue, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and the fans will go to each show because the way he's changing it. And so it's like worth going to all 3 shows because he changes it up every show.
Yeah, I love that.
And so that's kind of like where my head's at. About I would, I'll go follow Radiohead or Pearl Jam because they're or Wilco because bands like that are still doing that. Um, but maybe it's not the most popular stuff anymore. But I kind of stuck in one foot in the past. But so what are your thoughts about like streaming services? I mean, I think we're talking because I was able to find your music on a streaming service. But what are your thoughts as an artist with the way in the past we had CDs and tapes and vinyl, and everybody had to go to a record store to get it, and now everybody can just get it on their phone. What are your thoughts about the pros and cons of that?
I think the pros are like that people like me can make a song and without a manager or a label, I can upload it myself. Like, and I can actually work for myself and do what I want to do. And then at the same time, it's kind of like there's so much out there that it's like everything kind of does get a little bit lost in the madness. And then, especially with like streaming services, like the amount of money I think you get per stream, like I wouldn't even know what that is
Yeah, I
because
think
even with like,
I
yeah, even with like 22,000 streams or something on So Sad, it's like a couple of dollars.
yeah, because
So like,
you know what that
yeah,
rate is. That rate is like 0.004 of a penny.
yeah. So it's cool. Like a lot of like it's very accessible, but at the same time, it's like so many people are using it that it's hard to do it too because you don't really get a lot of like a lot back in terms of like finances. Not that that's the main thing, but it definitely makes it harder when you're trying
Yeah.
to pursue it.
I mean, it
Yeah.
seems like today what happens is like, since your stream rate for an indie artist, if you're not a Lady Gaga, you're not a Bruce Springsteen, our cut is like 0.004 of a penny. The bigger artists get a bigger cut. But so they
Yeah.
get closer to like a higher percentage of a penny. But it's still like a penny. And the question is
Yeah.
like the weird thing is like as a podcaster, I get my rate is way higher than my rate as a musician. And that kind of tells you where people value music today. Where like as a podcaster, I can make
Yeah.
more money as a podcaster than I make as a musician. And so it's like, why is the world valuing that more than a musician? I was like, find people like it, just like people like YouTubers. YouTubers can make really high income compared to musicians for playing a video
Yeah.
game and commenting on a video game. And I guess they're more like an entertainer in a different way. But why is ever since Napster and and iTunes and Spotify came on the scene, it's been like a double-edged sword because music has been somewhat devalued as an art
Mm.
form. And how do we actually make a living at it? You have to go and do sync licensing. You have to do merchandising. You got to sell T-shirts. You can make more money. Like I make more money going to New York and selling a Phantom Electric Ghost T-shirt than I do selling my record.
Yeah.
And so that like that kind of makes you wonder, like, why is it that people don't value music in the same way they'll go pay $60 for an Xbox game, but they can't pay $10 for a CD?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question, but I yeah, I feel that. I feel exactly what you said.
And so that as an artist, we have to say, well, maybe I can get on the soundtrack of that video game, and maybe I can get sync licensing so I can get 30 seconds of my song into a commercial. And that's
Well, yeah, like commercial rates are
yeah,
great.
yeah. I mean, but then
That's
you get your
yeah.
fans say, "Oh, you sold out," and say, "Well, well, 0.04 of a penny doesn't really pay the bills." So, like, if I've got to sell 30 seconds of a song to be on a TV show, or an independent film, or to get 20, 2 minutes on a scene on an independent film, and I make more money than I make in a year from Spotify, then if that's selling out, I'm sorry, maybe I'm gonna do that.
Yeah. I think there's no shame in having a bit of a sellout moment for sure.
When sometimes it's cool, like if you go and you do the sync licensing, like an artist like myself, like I'm a keyboardist, I'm a synthesist, so I can do ambient music, and I can do stuff without lyrics. And so if somebody needs like a mood, I can go on my Roland or my all my synths, and I can create like a mood piece, and people might not even know it's the Ghost. I just sold it, and it's in a film or something, but like nobody even knows it's me, and so I can fund my other projects with that work. You know,
Well, yeah, there's that too. That's being a bit crafty, I think.
yeah, it's just sometimes it's like then you don't get the kind of hit from your audience because they don't even know it was you.
Yeah.
But
That's so
it's
true.
kind of like it's like I think the audience has to understand, like, if you end up getting on a jingle, well, that's how your artist is going to be able to get to you. That's how they can support a tour if they can get that income from something else. So what I guess that kind of vibes into like what is the state of the music industry? What do you think it is in this year? Do you have thoughts about things that could be better or things that you feel are good about it?
No, it's a bit tough right now. Like even with like TikTok, a lot of the time, like someone might have their song uploaded to TikTok and then people will just cut it up and change it and kind of like DJ it on
Yeah,
the app, but it gets no, it can get no credit for the song that it was actually taken from. And I feel like there's a bit of like an issue at the moment with like
yeah,
with that and like the music industry. Like it is really hard to kind of make a song and then get even like sometimes credit for it because like it can be used in like a meme or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, it's like a little bit scary in that way, but I don't know. I'm trying not to think about that kind of side of things too much. I'm more just thinking about like just doing it because I like doing it, and if something good comes out of it, then that's a good thing, and if not, then oh well.
Well, I think every singer songwriter does it because they're passionate about it. Like I've been working since I was 17, and I'm in my 50s, and only
Yeah,
in the last 2 years have I started to actually do, pretty well. But if I was waiting for that moment, when I was 17, somebody told me it was going to take till I was 52 to do well. I've always said, well, I'm not going to do it. But I kind of did it because I love to do it, and I got other side gigs. But yeah, a lot of it is because of what you're like a musician would say, hey, if you can you play this gig, and it doesn't even matter if they don't pay you, they just they feed you or they put you up. Like, yeah, I'll go to New York so I can get in front of this crowd, or I'll go to LA because I can do
yeah,
this. Look, if I can go jump on somebody else's record and somebody wants me to do it, and like, okay, we'll work out the pay after. It's always been more about like, okay, can I get the exposure? Can I actually play in front of somebody? And that's kind of like if it works out financially, then fine. But a lot of musicians, that's what we do. It's like if I get an opportunity to do the work, I'm going to do the work. You know, you have to think about like,
exactly.
are you getting ripped off or something? But a lot of times, like you're so passionate about what you do, it's like, okay, if I get an opportunity to play in New York, I'm going to play. you know,
Yeah,
you know. So it's kind of like the money is something that you think about, but it's like a lot of times it's like, okay, if I can get the exposure and work on this, then you're gonna work on it just because you love it.
yeah, totally. Just do it for the sake of loving it, I think.
So like now you said like you're in this Corona kind of lockdown, and you're kind of limited in what you can do. So like all the work that you do on your music, do you just do it from your home studio, or do you have to like send it to your producer and send it to an engineer? How are you actually going forward with projects and stuff?
I've only recently just started learning Logic actually, and I've done a bit on my own in Logic at home. Even like some of the vocal recordings I've done on my own as well. But then I've worked like before we had a lockdown, I was also working with a producer, Tobias Priddle, and that was on this next single, Fallen Angel. And so we'll kind of, it's like that was a home studio as well. So it was more like homely kind of vibes, nothing like, no like
Big
big
studio.
studio spaces. Yeah. And then the mixer was in Sydney, so we just sent it to them.
But it's cool thing today with the modern technology is like you don't have to go to Sunset Sound or Olympia or Electric Lady or all the big old studios that everybody had to go to get a sound. Now,
Yeah, you can pretty much do all that in your
yeah,
home.
yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah.
I've had a home studio set up for the last 5 years, and in some cases, like I've sent stuff to producers where they went and used their studio instead of mine because they had like maybe a Neve board that I could run through, so they could run something through and get better sound because they're using better processors, um, and preamps and all that. But yeah, a lot of times, for what I like to do in terms of indie kind of lo-fi music, my home studio can do it, and I know I can run through some things and pretty much get it to where I want it to be. So I noticed that a lot of artists are really doubling down. You know, everybody I've talked to since February is saying, "Well, I'm learning more about Logic, or I'm learning more about Ableton, or I'm learning more about Mainstage." They're all kind of because of the situation. It's like, okay, I'm gonna really take it serious, and I'm gonna learn some of this stuff so I can keep on recording.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and it was like I even surprised myself, I think, because I always thought like I could never learn how to do that. And yeah, I've just been like, I used to more like write songs on my guitar, and then now I'm just starting songs in Logic. So it's kind of like changing up my songwriting a little bit as well.
Do you find that because you're doing that, now you're saying, well, now I can bring some violins in, or now I can bring some horns
Yeah.
in, or I can bring these pads in, or I can bring samples in. I can use clips. I can start to be like, the way George Martin was with the Beatles. So you get the difference
Yeah.
between like Help and Sergeant Pepper's. Is suddenly like Help is kind of like the band just being straight, recording in the studio like a band, just sequentially or like all together. And then when you get the Sergeant Pepper, you suddenly, okay, well, I can use backwards tape. I can use all these weird, overlays and start looking at music like a canvas. Um,
Yeah, it's definitely opened things up for me. It's a lot of fun, but at the same time, you can go way too far with it. Like you can just get a bit too like
yeah, I
weird
guess.
and like kooky, and then you're like, hang on, what what is the song? Like, what am I doing? I've just got like a weird horn sound coming in here now because I did this at 2 a.m. and then this part I did at like 10 a.m. and it's just acoustic guitar. But it definitely it's made it interesting and good, but I like definitely know at times I can get a bit too carried away with it.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like how far do you get into that that Phil Spector wall of sound? Because like the problem with like multi-track recording is like you can deviate from the honesty of the original demo. And so like my kind of test is if I go back and I look at a project and suddenly I got like 24 tracks on something I started that only had 4. And if the original 4-track version is more honest and it sound, it really is a better track. Even though I did all this work
Mm.
to make it have 24, if I'll make a decision, then you know what, the thing that the demo is actually is closer to the truth. So I'll actually release the version that's closer to the demo than the one that's got so much work on it.
Oh, that's so true. I feel like the demo is always so close to your heart, and then when you like whenever you start working on it or like get it mixed or whatever, you get it back and you're like, oh, this is so different to what I like originally thought the song was gonna be. But I don't know, song like you have to also get used to like the songs changing, which is what I've gotten used to with this track because I think when I started with it, it was more acoustic, and then the way it's ended up is way different. But I also like really love it. So
Yeah, I mean, there's something about crafting a song and making it a hit or making it more accessible.
yeah.
So it's like so I mean, if all that crafting, makes the song like a better song, and it's just tighter and if it's a fully finished work versus the kind of spontaneity of the original.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like that's why you always get these archive collections
Yeah.
that you'll go back. I just listened to like an archive collection of Prince's Signed to the Times, and it's like 8 hours long,
Wow.
and it's got all these demos. And the thing about Prince's demos are like they could be released as finished products because he was kind of crazy. I mean, in terms of the level of work and the quality on them, they're like Hendrix. Like you could listen to Hendrix outtakes, have different versions of his solos for any of his songs, and I'm a big Hendrix fan. And you could say, well, yeah, that could have been released. It was just as good, but it's just the feel of one versus the other. And the Hendrix made a decision like I like the feel of this one versus that one. But they're technically all good, and they all have different kind of vibes. So it's kind of like how do you make that decision as an artist? Which one you leave on the cutting floor and which one you put out?
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's always interesting. So, do you have like friends listen to your music and kind of give you an opinion as to which version you should put out, or you would kind of make that decision yourself?
I just make it on my own because I can like feel too much. So if I have too many opinions, it can get a bit too confusing for me. So I just find to like just stick with my gut and hope for the best, I think.
I think it's a good way to do it because, like, once music is very personal, And if you bring it to all I have one best friend that I have listening to stuff from time to time, and sometimes I listen to him and sometimes I don't. I would say probably like 90% of the time, I am informed by what he says, but I'll still go with what I think I want to do. Um, but it's like, yeah, it's interesting. Like some artists like want to have more feedback, and other artists are like, I know what I want.
Yeah.
You know, kind of a personal thing, because like your music is like like some people, like Prince used to call his music like his children. They felt like, yeah, he actually said it in interviews, like I feel like the songs are like my children. So he felt very close to him, and he's very kind of protective of him, and had very strong opinions about how he would perceived or what he was going to do with them, which was interesting. But yeah, I mean, artists can kind of go all different directions with that kind of level. But
Yeah, I think a lot of artists get really like connected to their work and it's hard to sway them once you start working on it, I think.
yeah, because I mean, you could work on something and you really like. I think like your favorite song in your own catalog usually is like wildly different than what your fans' favorite song
Yeah.
is. Because you have like a personal like time that you put into something, and that might be like where this is the one that really pulls my heart, but my fans like this one, and then that sometimes becomes like the core thing, and like if you got a song that becomes number one and your fans love it, but you're like after a while you're like, well, I really don't like that song as much as the fans like it. And I'm kind of here and my fans are there, but I guess I got to keep on playing that because that's what the fans like. Yeah. But I think as you get to be popular artists, they run into that issue where they've got like this one song that they got to play all the time. That after a while they really aren't into it, but they kind of got to do it because it's like paying the bills and what the fans
Yeah,
want.
yeah.
Man, I guess everybody would love to be in that situation when you're an indie artist. It's like, well, I'd like to be there.
Yeah.
Okay. you know, so like when you see the bigger artists playing about it, you're like, well, I guess that's a good problem to have.
I know, right? Wouldn't that be nice?
It'd be a good problem to have. It's like, oh yeah, everybody's sick of Hotel California. Everybody's sick of like Freebird, but that's why you got the fans in the crowd. So besides this new single, is this part of a bigger project, or are you just working on singles, or is this toward like an EP or an album?
I think I'm just working on singles just because singles are way easier to kind of market at the moment in like the current climate. But uh I'd love to do an album, but it just takes a lot of time when you're independent. Just because getting people to like work on your schedule to get something
Mm-hmm.
done is just so hard, that it would probably take me like a really long time to get a complete album out. So I'm just kind of taking like things as they come, so just like one step at a time. So I think just singles. Um, and yeah, I don't know about the bigger picture. I think maybe because of like how the world is right now, I'm just, yeah, just taking things as they come and doing
Yeah,
it for like the enjoyment of it.
yeah. I think singles, that the way the market is on the streaming services, is like the best thing. The only thing I like about like EPs or albums, like the one thing that I noticed, at least in the States, is if you take like an EP and you put it on vinyl, or you put it on tape in a small batch of like 500 or 1,000, and then you go to New York City and you play a gig, you can sell all those, and you can sell them for a pretty good amount of money. And you actually, even though it's a small batch, you can actually make more money than you make streaming. Um, so in that way, those album or EP formats are good for that.
Mm.
And so if you're indie and you're like self-funded and you put out these little projects that people can buy your CD, and then they get the artwork and they get a poster or something. It just gives you more merch to sell as a band, and something that physically gets into the hands of your audience. So um, you don't have to go and create a giant batch. There's small companies that, at least in the States, that allow you to make like micro batches
Yeah.
of stuff. So it's actually possible to do. But it was dependent on being able to tour.
Yeah, true.
and with and you know, I have not been as successful on my website selling that stuff than if I go to New York or Boston, I was able to sell it because I was physically there. So I've been kind of holding off, you know, and doing what you're doing, like singles, just because you physically can't get to the venue.
Yeah.
Yeah, this has been really cool to talk to you, and I wish you a lot of luck with the new single, which will get in the States, I think, tomorrow.
Yep. Yeah,
Um,
it comes out on the
so
18th, like worldwide. So I think it's different with different time zones. But yeah, thanks for having me. It was really fun to chat, and I'm gonna get ready for bed because it's 11 p.m. here. So I know it's early
okay,
morning for you.
this will be out within an hour.
Yeah.
We're on 11 platforms. We're on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Radio Public, Overcast, Google. So, and we have integration with Instagram, where the Spotify version of this podcast will be able to be put into a story and a highlight. So we will start to push this out in the next hour, and we will put a story up on our Instagram, and you can use it as well. That will allow people to go right from the hyperlink on Instagram right to the interview.
Awesome. I'm so excited. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you, and have a great night. And we look forward to talking to you in the future when you have other projects to communicate to your fans about.
Awesome. All the best.
Good, thank you.